Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm here to break down the wide receivers for the Sunday main slate on Draftkings for week 2. We're in week 2 already. The wide receiver video always seems to be probably the most important one, probably the deepest one we go into, I think, because GPPs are so important when it comes to wide receivers, in my opinion. And this week, you just need to prepare yourself. If you're playing cash games, you're gonna be playing cheap receivers. There are so many cheap receivers this week that offer you such a high floor. So we're gonna get into all of that. But before I do, if you're new to this channel, make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, turn on the notification bell. All those things really help me grow. We've had a ton of growth throughout NASCAR and NBA season, and now NFL is here, and we've had some growth throughout NFL as well too. So if you're new here from that, thank you for subscribing here. If you want to get more of my content for only $10 a month, you can subscribe to my Patreon, where you're going to get weekly articles for every single position, along with rankings for every single position, GBP rankings, cash rankings for both positions, and then you're going to get top stacks, cash, who my favorite cash plays are, all my injury notes, and then an article for all the main showdowns, so Thursday night, Sunday night, Monday night showdown. So be sure to check that out. If you want to follow me on social media, my Twitter's at DFSNateLane, Instagram's at @NateLane_. Just love talking about sports and stuff over there, so be sure to check that out as well. But yeah, I think that's really all I got to say. Let's get into the matchups and the receivers. So we're going to start with the Buffalo Bills, who go up against the Miami Dolphins this week, where we have Stefon Diggs at 6,500, John Brown, who is questionable right now, at 6,000, and Cole Beasley at 4,700. This is, a matchup where the corners in Miami really aren't that bad. Like, Byron Jones was one of the top 10 PFF corners last year. Xavier Howard struggled last year, but we're expecting a bounce back year from him, I think. Young corner who just was in a just horrible position last year. So, and then Jamal Perry in the slot. The safeties in Miami are Eric Rowe and Bobby McCain, and then so the wide receivers. The wide receivers matchup overall is positive because, Xavier Howard and Jamal Perry don't grade out well. Byron Jones does. When we go look at the offensive versus defensive line, it is a positive line for the Buffalo Bills offensive line, so that helps the quarterback have a cleaner pocket to pass the ball. This game is going to be one of the lowest score. I think it is tied for the lowest total game of Pittsburgh game, on the entire slate. So there's not going to be a ton of scoring, so maybe not necessarily the best place to go for upside, but they just have good matchups. Like, I think John Brown, if he plays, has a bunch of deep threat possibility. And then when we go look at the targets, last week, Stefon Diggs saw 9 targets, John Brown saw 10, and Cole Beasley saw 7. So there's all solid floor there. I'm honestly surprised at how many targets Stefon Diggs and John Brown themselves got. I was thinking probably more around 7 or 8, but they got 10 and 9, and that was in a game where they were ahead. So that's fine. This is a good matchup overall for the Bills. I think they should be able to handle themselves. I like all of them for GBP. Probably not going to go anywhere for cash, just because not that I hate them as cash plays at all, because I don't. I think they're all fine cash plays, but I just think there's so many better cash values on the slate this week that I just don't feel the need to go to any of these guys for it. But definitely GBP options, all of them have high ceilings. We all know John Brown, Stefon Diggs have a super high ceiling. Cole Beasley, not as much. Probably won't get as much Cole Beasley, but definitely want some Stefon Diggs and John Brown in tournaments this week. Up next, we got Devonte Parker and Preston Williams for the Miami Dolphins. Devonte Parker is $5,900 and Preston Williams is $4,800. They're going to draw a tough matchup this week against Tre'Davious White, Levi Wallace as the 2 corners. Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde are in the safety position. Devonte Parker grades out well against all 3 corners, but he's probably going to get shadowed by Tre'Davious White for the most part. And Preston Williams also is a slightly negative matchup overall, but I like Preston Williams a little bit more than Devonte Parker, because I know even the overall matchup grades out kind of negatively. He's going to go up against Levi Wallace, who's just nowhere as shape of corner as Tre'Davious White is. What a terrible start for Devonte Parker the season, man, having to go back-to-back against Stephon Gilmore and Tre'Davious White, 2 of the best corners in the entire league. We saw him only get 4 targets last week, and that, it's because Stephon Gilmore's out there. Preston Williams saw 7, so I think Preston Williams probably leads the team in targets again this week. They are going to be playing from behind. It is a low-scoring game. It's a tough matchup, so I don't know how much I really want to get to him, but I don't think I'm going to play Devonte Parker again at all. But I think Preston Williams is someone I do like for tournaments, just as he's cheap, and he has the upside. We saw what Preston Williams could do last year, so the upside is definitely there. Up next, we're going to go to the New York Jets, where we have Chris Hogan at 3,200, Jameson Crowder at 5,400, and Brashad Perryman at 3,800. Now, the first thing I'm going to say is Jameson Crowder is actually questionable this week. He did not practice today with a hamstring injury, or today. So if he's out, that just opens up so many more targets for Chris Herndon, especially, I think, as in the tight ends, which we'll talk about in the tight end video tomorrow, and then Brashad Perryman for sure. I think if Jameson Crowder's out, Rashad Perryman becomes one of the best plays on the slate. Now, I know they're playing the 49ers, but Richard Sherman just got put on the IR the other day. One of the best corners in the league, one of the best. You just don't play wide receivers against him often. We saw last week Deandre Hopkins go off, but it wasn't against Sherman. It was against Emmanuel Mosley on the other side. They lined up intentionally DeAndre Hopkins away from Richard Sherman in that game, if you watched it. So it's what you attack. Now you don't have Sherman, so you got Emmanuel Mosley and Ahkello Witherspoon out there. Even if Jameson Crowder does play, this is a good matchup for him too. These corners just aren't really that good. As you see, Jameson Crowder and Rashad Perryman both grade out positively against them, where they were not when Sherman was in this thing. Jaquiski Tartt and Jimmy Ward are pretty good cover safeties out in the middle. Sam Darnold is going to grade out negatively against all the DBs, but you kind of expected that. The problem is here, it's still a super tough matchup. Look, all three of them are going to grade out negatively. I don't really want any Chris Hogan anyway. I just put him in here because he's number 3 receiver. But we saw Jameson Crowder get 13 targets last week. So if Jameson Crowder misses, that's going to be 13 targets opened up. I'm assuming a good bit of them are honestly probably going to Chris Herndon, but I think we could see Rashad Perryman get to 8. And honestly, I don't even hate going to Rashad Perryman even if Crowder plays, because I like the matchup a lot more on the outside now. No one's going to be on him. It's only 3,800. I'll use him in tournaments. I'm not going anywhere in this game in cash just because it is against the 49ers. It's a really brutal matchup, but we've seen teams be able to tear up his 49ers defense. And a year ago, if you remember the two games that Richard Sherman missed last year against New Orleans and Atlanta, we saw Michael Thomas have a really good game, but it was mostly him and Jared Cook, and then Julio Jones went off with Atlanta. Now I know, this is Rashad Perryman, that's Michael Thomas and Julio Jones. I'm not saying he's going to go get 40. I'm saying he can get you 20, and then that's going to be just an absolute huge value at that price. So definitely somewhere I'm interested in is Rashad Perryman, especially if Crowder's out. But even if Crowder misses, I think he's a decent value who's worth taking a shot on. Up next, we'll go to the Baltimore Ravens, where we have Miles Boykin at 4,100, Marquis Brown at 6,200, and Willie Snead at 4,300. They're playing against the Houston Texans, where they continue to be without Gary and Conley. So the starting unit is going to be Bradley Roby, Vernon Hargreaves, and John Reed. That's going to be a very positive match for all of them, especially Marquis Brown. Eric Murray and Justin Reed are in the safety spots. They're pretty good cover safeties, but it don't matter. Lamar's grades out way better than them, so that's not a worry for me. When we go look at the offensive line versus defensive line, it's going to be a positive matchup for the Baltimore offensive line. And then overall, matchup-wise, Marquis Brown's one of the best matchups on the entire slate. I don't think he's the highest. Nah, he's not, but he's up there. Looks like about 4th or 5th highest for Marquis Brown. So one of the highest, best matchups on the slate is Marquis Brown. Miles Boykin looks good too. They are going to be playing from ahead though, which does worry me a little bit, so they're probably going to be running the ball a lot. We saw Baltimore destroy Houston last year, and Houston's definitely not as good as they were last year. You don't have DeAndre Hopkins, stuff happens. So I don't know how high the ceiling is, but I definitely like Marquis Brown because I know that his ceiling is definitely there. Willie Snead and Miles Boykin probably won't be attacking them too much this week. I don't really ever do that unless someone like Marquis Brown or maybe an Andrews is out or something, but Marquis Brown definitely someone in play for me this week. He only saw a target 6 times last week, but early on in that game when they weren't just killing Cleveland, he was getting targeted a lot. So I think, if this game ends up being closer than that, which I think it should be closer than that Cleveland game, he can end up being a very good, valuable player on Draftkings who has a pretty high ceiling. It is the second highest total on the slate too, so there's expected to be a lot of scoring in this game. Up next, we got the Pittsburgh Steelers going against the Denver Broncos, where we have Deontay Johnson at here we go. I'm going to start getting into these cheaper receivers that just you could target. Deontay Johnson at 4,500. Then we have Juju Smith-Schuster at 6,500 and James Washington at 4,100 are the guys I'm interested in. AJ Bouye, Michael Ojemodia, and Bryce Callahan are the starting corners, but AJ Bouye got hurt in a game on Monday night, so I don't know if he's 100% going to play. We're going to have to wait for that tomorrow. And if he doesn't play, it's already a banged up secondary for Denver, but if AJ Bouye is out, it's even worse. I know he's really not that good, but you just have a bunch of backup corners going against some pretty solid receivers, especially Juju. The safeties are Kareem Jackson and Justin Simmons. Ben Roethlisberger doesn't grade out great against those guys, but that's okay. When we go look at the offensive line versus defensive line, it is a positive line for this Pittsburgh offensive line, but overall, it's because of this quarterback thing. Honestly, let me just go take this out because this matchup here for the quarterbacks is so skewed to one game Ben Roethlisberger played last year. So if I were to just take this out, there you go. Positive matches for James Washington, Juju Smith-Schuster, Deontay Johnson. We all know Ben Roethlisberger looked really good last week. I just don't have the PFF grades loaded in yet because I don't want to just go off a one-game sample. But if I don't want to go off a one-game sample, I just shouldn't even include Ben's. So I think that's a good way to put it. So James Washington, Juju Smith-Schuster, Deontay Johnson. Now they all have very positive matchups. This is the lowest total game on the slate, though. That worries me a little bit. They are going to be playing from ahead. Definitely don't really want to stack this game. Last week, in the last game, we did see Deontay Johnson had 10 targets. That's why I'm saying this value. Juju saw 6. Juju's going to be Juju. I want to play Juju everywhere. He's a great tournament play for me for sure. I love the matchup. But Deontay Johnson, I think, is one of those top cash wide receivers, and I'm saying it's just too cheap. I mean, he saw 10 targets last week. I don't know if he'll see 10 again, but he'll probably see like 7, 8. And at only $4,500 for 10 targets, that's just simply way too cheap. And a good matchup, too. I mean, game pace isn't going to be great. The game total isn't great. But the individual matchup is. So Deontay Johnson just seems way, way, way too cheap for me. Definitely someone I want to get after on this slate. Definitely, I mean, there's a ton of great cheap cash wide receivers this week. And I mean, honestly, if you're making cash lineups, I'm going 1, 2, 3 cheap wide receivers. In tournaments, I'm not doing that. I want to be different. But 1, 2, 3, those cheap wide receivers. So Deontay Johnson is definitely someone in play there. Up next, we have the Houston Texans, where we have Randall Cobb, Brandon Cooks, and Will Fuller the fifth. It's a tough matchup for Houston. I mean, the Baltimore secondary is very, very good. Will Fuller, 6,300, Brandon Cooks, 4,900, and Cobb's 44. Marcus Peters, Jimmy Smith, and Marlon Humphrey in the slot. Very tough matchups. They're all going to grade out negatively. Fuller barely grades out positively. Chuck Clark, Deshaun Elliott are the two safeties. Deshaun Watson does grade out positively against all the corners overall, but still nothing like too great. When we go look at the offensive versus defensive line, the offensive line does pan out like positively, but most offensive lines do. Overall, Will Fuller grades out as a barely positive matchup. Randall Cobb does as well. I do like going to maybe like Will Fuller this week, just because now people aren't going to play him because he's in Baltimore, and I think he's going to be a low-owned GPP play. And Will Fuller, I don't really care who's guarding him. We know the ceiling is absolutely insanely high. We've seen him do it before. He got 10 targets last week. I mean, clearly he's not just going to be a deep threat anymore. He's going to be very involved in this offense, so I don't hate that at all. I think Will Fuller is a very high-end tournament play. That's not going to be highly owned. So I definitely want to get some Will Fuller this week. Not like a lock button or anything. I'm probably not going to stack the Texans either because I don't like this defense they're playing against, but Will Fuller definitely in play for me. Up next, we have the Indianapolis Colts with Paris Campbell and T.Y. Hilton. Paris Campbell, $4,500. T.Y. Hilton's $5,700. I think both these guys are a little bit too cheap just because this matchup is... I think Minnesota's going to be a team we're just going to be attacking with wide receivers all year. Their receivers, their corners suck. Cameron Dantzler, Holton Hill, Mike Hughes, none of them are good. They gave up, Devonte Adams had 41 last week against them. Now, I'm not saying T.Y. Hilton or Paris Campbell's about to put up 41, but because they're not Devonte Adams. But, man, that's just like, this is probably one of the best games of Devonte Adams' career. So, just to see that against that secondary, man. And, even Anthony Harrison Smith looked bad. When we go look at the offensive line versus defensive line, it's the Colts offensive line. We all know that's going to be positive. And the Vikings defense line right now without Daniel Hunter is bad as well. So their defensive line doesn't look good. Paris Campbell and T.Y. Hilton both grade out positively. Not like too positively, but Paris Campbell, another guy with 9 targets last week. I don't have Corona. With 9 targets this week. And, he's just a play that's going to get targets. He's too cheap for those 9 targets. And it's a great matchup in the secondary. I think it's a great cash option. T.Y. Hilton also. If you want to play him in cash too, like if you have a little bit extra salary over, you want to play T.Y. Hilton, by all means. Like he saw 9 targets too in a great matchup. I love these Colts wide receivers. And usually I say when I start loving the receivers, I love the quarterback, but I don't know. I just can never bring myself to play Phillip Rivers in tournaments ever. I don't feel like that ever works out. But these guys are going to get targeted the ball a ton, so I do not hate going there in cash. I think they're great cash options just because they're so cheap. Next, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars going up against Tennessee. DJ Chark, 6,000. Keelan Cole's 4,300. And Leviska Chanel's 4,200. They're going up against Malcolm Butler, Jonathan Joseph, and Chris Jackson. For now, I don't know about Adoree Jackson yet. If Adoree Jackson comes back, the matchup's obviously going to be a little bit tougher. But, he's not a cornerback. I'm just saying, I don't want to go there. He's not that good. Kenny Vaccaro and Kevin Byard are the safeties. Gardner Minshew grades out positively against the entire secondary. The offensive versus defensive line is a positive matchup for the offensive line for Jacksonville. The overall total, it's not supposed to be a super high scoring game, only 43, but they're going to be playing from behind. They're not favored in this game, as they shouldn't be. Tennessee looks good, man. Tennessee could hit their field goals the other night. They would have won that game by a lot, but they look good. I think that team is going to be very good this year. Leviska Chanel, I mean, these guys, none of these guys are cash plays for me. They're all tournament options. I mean, DJ Chark only got targeted 3 times last week, which surprised me. Keelan Cole led the team in targets of 5, and then Leviska Chanel had 4. So I think they're all, decent plays in tournaments just because they have the upside. The matchup's not like particularly tough. So taking shots in them in tournaments is fine. I think Leviska Chanel is going to be a very good player as well. So I think his ceiling is very high. I mean, I've never liked playing Keelan Cole in the past, so that's probably not somewhere I really want to go to. Now, I mean, DJ Chark always is ceiling. I'm really surprised he only saw 3 targets last week. I'm expecting that to get back up to like 7. So, I mean, if it doesn't, that's going to be a little worrisome for like season-long leagues with DJ Chark. But I think he's a good tournament option. Matchup's pretty solid, so I'll definitely get some of him. Up next, we have the Tennessee Titans going against the Jacksonville Jaguars, where we have A.J. Brown, 6,100, Corey Davis, 4,000, and Adam Humphries at 3,400. They're going against Trey Herndon, C.J. Henderson, who looked elite last week in his debut, and D.J. Hayden. I mean, C.J. Henderson looked really good. Like, he looks like he's going to be one of the next shutdown corners in the NFL. Anyway, then they have Josh Jones and Andrew Wingard as safeties. Ryan Tannehill grades out positively against them. The offensive line versus defensive line is going to be a positive matchup for the offensive line. And then A.J. Brown is my top matchup for the week. A.J. Brown had a rough game on Monday night, but he ended up ending up the game with 8 targets, so I think that's fine, and they definitely acted like they wanted to get him the ball in the second half of the game, so that's all good for me. I mean, I was a little bit worried, because I remember, like, I didn't watch the end of the game, but I woke up, and I saw that. I was like, oh crap, A.J. Brown didn't have a good game, and then I went and looked at the targets, and he had 8, and I was like, okay, and then I just went and looked at game scripts and everything, and game notes and the beat writers, and it looked like they were trying to get him the ball. He just didn't have a great game, so that's fine. A.J. Brown, we all know he's an elite talent. He's an elite athlete. He has his high ceiling, so I totally love going there. I don't know how much I want to stack with Ryan Tannehill, just because Ryan Tannehill stack. He doesn't really ever seem to have the ceiling, and we all know this is a run-first team. But A.J. Brown looks like a very good option for me. Yeah, I mean, here's 8 targets. I'm talking about it. I didn't even show you. There's the 8 targets for A.J. Brown, but Corey Davis, Corey Davis here. He also saw 8 targets, which shocked me, honestly. I was really surprised. When I watched the first half and, like, A.J. Brown was barely involved. It was all Corey Davis. And I was like, are you kidding me? Is Corey Davis finally going to break out? And then Adam Humphries saw 7 targets. I don't really want to go after Adam Humphries because he's such a, like, low depth of target guy. Just, catch and fall like a Hunter Renfrow or something, or Julian Edelman. So probably not someone I really want to get to as much. But Corey Davis, I think, is just a great cash play. $4,000. He's going to get targeted a good bit. I mean, it's hard because, I don't really trust Corey Davis right now. But he saw 8 targets last week, and now he gets to go up against this Jacksonville defense, which is trash. And I'm assuming because of C.J. Henderson's play last week, he's probably just going to match up A.J. Brown. So he might get Herndon or D.J. Hayden. I don't know which one. And those are going to be great matchups for him. So Corey Davis looked good last week, and I like to see that continue. I think he's a good cash play. Deshaun Hamilton, Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton for the Denver Broncos. Deshaun Hamilton's 3,500, Jerry Jeudy's 49, and Cortland Sutton, I didn't even put Tim Patrick in here. I'm going to add Tim Patrick because that's important. Tim Patrick, boom. Okay. So there you go. Tim Patrick's 3,800. So Cortland Sutton missed last game. If Cortland Sutton is out again, I think that's going to free up some targets once again for Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, Deshaun Hamilton. The problem is, I hate this matchup. Like, I hate playing anybody against Pittsburgh. Like, look, this is the worst matchup on the entire slate. On the entire slate is Pittsburgh. This defense, I'm really starting to believe that they're the best defense in the NFL. I mean, they are so good, and I just don't want to go there. Cortland Sutton's going to be out. Jerry Jeudy and Tim Patrick are cheap, and they both saw 8 and 5 targets. But if Cortland Sutton plays, first of all, none of these guys are even in play at that point. But I just don't I hate this matchup. It's like the same thing I talked about Melvin Gordon in the running back video yesterday. Like, I just don't play people against Pittsburgh. I'm going to say the same thing about Noah Fant tomorrow. I don't play people against Pittsburgh. That defense is very, very good, and you just don't see a lot of people doing well against them. A touchdown, yeah, maybe, but they're not going to get a ton of yards. You don't see players just going off against this defense, so probably it's just going to be an avoid for me on Sunday for this one. I may get some shares of Cortland Sutton and maybe get some shares of Jerry Jeudy, but the cheap guys, I think they're pretty much traps. People want to play them, they can play them, but I don't think they're going to do much. It's not like Tim Patrick and Deshaun Hamilton are actually good either. Like, they're not good receivers, so not someone I want to go after. Up next, we have the Kansas City Chiefs going up against the LA Chargers. Tyreek Hill, Sami Watkins are the two receivers I'm looking at in Kansas City. Tyreek Hill 7,500, Sami Watkins 4,800. They're going to have to go up against Casey Hayward, Michael Davis, and Chris Harris Jr. in the slot. Overall, and then on the safeties, that's Desmond King and Rayshawn Jenkins. It's positive matchup for Tyreek Hill, but negative for Sami. Sami's got a tough matchup there in the slot against, or no, I'm sorry, Tyreek's in the slot. That's right, Tyreek Hill is playing mostly from the slot, so he's going to get Chris Harris Jr., who's, been one of the best slot corners of the decade, but he's not as good as he used to be, so I don't have a problem with Tyreek Hill there. But Sami Watkins against Casey Hayward, that's a tough matchup. Patrick Mahomes, of course, is going to grade positively against the secondary. When we go look at the offensive versus defensive line, their offensive line is going to grade out positively. Tyreek Hill grades out. It's a very good matchup. Sami Watkins is positive, but not like that much. I'm just not really too interested in the Chiefs this week because I'm telling you, this is going to be a team where I don't play players against all year. The LA Chargers defense, they play slow. They are a very good defensive team. They're one of the best defensive units in the entire league. Yeah, in the entire league. If this team had an offense, they'd be legit. They don't have an offense, though. So Tyreek Hill, Sami Watkins. But Sami Watkins is another one of those cheap receivers who saw 9 targets last week. I don't think his targets are as guaranteed as someone like a Corey Davis or a Deontay Johnson or maybe some guys we're about to talk about, but I still think he's a good target guy, and I think he's someone definitely a target in tournaments, but probably not going to go there for cash. Tyreek Hill at 7,500, always someone that I play in tournaments because his ceiling is just out of the world, so definitely someone I want to get some exposure to in tournaments. Up next, we have the LA Chargers. They're facing off against the Chiefs, where we have Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. Those are the two guys I'm looking at. Keenan Allen's 5,700, Mike Williams 4,200. Their corners they got to go up against are Travarius Ward, L'Jarius Sneed, and Tyrann Mathieu, who plays slot corner sometimes. They both grade out positively. Tyrann Mathieu, Juan Thornhill are the safeties. Tyrod Taylor grades out negatively against his secondary. That's not good. This secondary is not that good. You go look at the offensive line versus defensive line, it's going to be a negative matchup for the Chargers. And overall, both these guys grade out negatively matchup-wise, but I just don't – I know it's a negative matchup, but Keenan Allen I'm not really that interested in. I don't think he's cheap enough where I really want to get there. Mike Williams, though, cash play. Like, I don't – tournament – see, yeah, I guess you got to play him in tournaments because Mike Williams' ceiling is so high because he's such like a big touchdown deep threat guy. So – Mike Williams, he had 9 targets last week. $4,200, had 9 targets last week. I think he's going to get somewhere in that same range again. He's a big receiver, red zone threat. And you have to play fast against the Chiefs. The Chiefs are going to score. They're going to go fast. And the way to beat the Chiefs is you have to throw the ball a ton. So what are they going to do? They're going to throw the ball a ton. Mike Williams is going to probably get Travarius Ward or L'Jarius Sneed on the outside, depending on if Keenan Allen plays more slot or outside. Give me that all day. I mean, he should be able to have a field day with those guys. I mean, yeah, the offensive line versus defensive line matchup isn't great, and the quarterback play isn't great, but Mike Williams, a big receiver who's going to be a deep threat. They're going to have to pass the ball a ton. Give me all that in cash, and honestly, just give me some in tournaments too. I don't hate it. Not going to be like I think an elite tournament option, but at cheap with big upside is what I like to go to. So I think that's Mike Williams. I think he grades out fine. Definitely someone for cash. Tournaments looks like a solid option too. Not stacking the Chargers this week though. We'll say that. Up next, we have Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, and Golden Tate. CeeDee Lamb for the Dallas Cowboys. Cooper 6,300, Gallup 56, and Lamb 47. Yeah, this is the game. So this is the game that everyone's stacking this week. I'm gonna stack it too. I mean, it's a 52.5 total, highest total on the slate by 2.5 points. You have 2 defenses that aren't good. You have 2 quarterbacks who are very good. The offensive line versus defensive line matchups are positive everywhere. Well, at least on a run game. No, they are positive everywhere. Like, it's just every matchup's great. And you have Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, and CeeDee Lamb having 3 of the best matchups on the entire slate. CeeDee Lamb's another guy, one of these cheaper guys that I think is fine for cash. He saw 6 targets last week. It's not 9, but all these guys I'm saying, yeah, they saw 9, 10 targets. They're probably not seeing that again. They're probably going to see something like 6, and I think Lamb's probably going to see something like 6. This is going to be a game where the Dallas Cowboys are going to be throwing the ball a ton. And I want parts of it. I want stacks of this game. I want parts of Amari Cooper. I want parts of Michael Gallup. I want parts of CeeDee Lamb. I want parts of Zeke. I want parts of everything in this offense in tournaments for sure. So definitely tournament options are Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb, a good cash play. I'd probably go for, he's just a little more expensive than the $4,500 guys. Like, you can pay it for another running back instead. So it just all comes down to your build and how you're building things out. But I think CeeDee Lamb is a good cash play as well. Definitely. And he's a good tournament play too because, CeeDee Lamb's explosive. He's an explosive offense and a great matchup. So definitely want to get some exposure there. Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, and I'm expecting Golden Tate to be back for the New York Giants this week. Darius Slayton, man, had himself a game. I saw a stat last night that I think since week 5 of last year, Darius Slayton leads the league in touchdowns. or maybe it was week 10. It was probably week 10. I don't know. It was either week 5 or week 10, but I was like, wow, okay. And I'm a Giants fan, and any sort of, some sort of like hope for us is good. So this is hope, is Darius Slayton. Sterling Shepard still sucks. Golden Tate, I don't know why he's on the team, but the $5,500 Sterling Shepard, $5,000 Golden Tate, or Darius Slayton, $4,900 Golden Tate. We have going against Kyle Fuller, Jalen Johnson, Buster Screen. It's going to be positive matchups all around for them. Those corners really aren't that good. Taishan Gibson Sr. and Eddie Jackson are to save these. Daniel Jones is going to grade out positively against this entire secondary. When we go look at the offensive line versus defensive line matchup, it's going to be actually, surprisingly, a positive matchup for the New York Giants. Bears' defensive line is Khalil Mack, and that's it. So they're really not that good outside of him. Akeem Hicks is a good run defender, but not a great pass rusher. So there's a difference there. Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, Golden Tate, all grade out positively. The one problem I will say is this is supposed to be a low-scoring game. Probably not. It could be a sneaky stack. This could end up being a very sneaky stack this week, but probably not somewhere I really want to go. Slayton saw 9 targets last week. I will say Golden Tate missed. If Golden Tate misses, go right. I'm going right back to Slayton at 5,000. I think it's another good cash play. At that point, he's cheap. He's going to see a ton of targets, and he has upside in a good matchup. So, but if Golden Tate plays, probably not a cash play anymore, but still definitely want Darius Slayton for tournaments. I don't think this matchup's as good as people think. We did see Detroit not do so hot against them last week, but I'm going to go back to it. I don't hate it at all. If you want to stack this game, it's a tough one to stack because it is one of the lower scoring games on the slate. We'll talk more about that in the top stacks video, but I think it's fine if you want to make a Jones, a Slayton stack. That's probably the only one I would stack. I don't think Shepard has a ceiling. I know Golden Tate really don't have that ceiling, but Slayton and Jones is an okay stack. I think that has upside, but probably still not one. I mean, it's just when you have some of these super high scoring games on this slate, it's hard to justify saying I'm going to go away from that and go to Daniel Jones. So, but yeah, and now we got Philadelphia, where this is another one of those games I really want to stack. I really like this game. Everyone's all week is going to talk about Dallas and Atlanta, which is great. They should be. That's a game that you should stack. It's like last week of Atlanta and Seattle. And it was the game. Well, no, it wasn't. The Green Bay game was the game to stack. But still, this is a game where the defense is this is what I always say about the LA Rams defense. They have 2 really, really good players in Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey. Then after that, they suck. Everywhere else, they suck. It's bad. They lost Corey Littleton. I mean, they weren't good last year, but then they lost their 2 linebackers, and now they have the worst linebacking core in the league. The rest of their secondary sucks. The rest of their defensive line isn't that good. So, Desean Jackson's 5,100, Jalen Reagor's 4,100, and Greg Ward's 4,200. They're going to go up against Jalen Ramsey, Darius Williams, and Troy Hill. Overall, positive matchups for these guys. When the safeties are Taylor Rapp and John Johnson. Carson Wentz has a positive matchup against those guys. The offensive line's kind of beat up right now. I need to put Lane Johnson in for Herbig because he's back. Let's just go ahead and put him in right now. Lane Johnson, because I forgot to do that before this video started. Switched out Sherman, but Johnson I did not. I forgot that links. Okay, so Lane Johnson is back. That makes the offensive line versus defensive line matchup way better. When we go look at that matchup, overall it's going to be positive because I'm telling you, Aaron Donald's great, but the rest of the offense isn't, or the rest of the defense line isn't. So Desean Jackson, Jalen Reagor, and Greg Ward all grade out positively. Jackson saw 7 targets last week. Reagor only saw 4. Ward saw 7. I don't want to go to Greg Ward. He doesn't have a high ceiling, but Desean Jackson I'll definitely attack last week. I think this is a matter of post-hype. Post-hype last week, everyone was all on Desean Jackson. He didn't do anything. Let's go back to him this week. Yeah, he may have Jalen Ramsey on him, but I don't really care. We saw Amari Cooper go off last week in this matchup, so it wasn't really against Ramsey. Ramsey was more shadowing Gallup the whole game, but I don't think he's going to shadow Desean Jackson this game, honestly, so not too worried there. But this is a game where this game between the Rams and the Eagles has shootout potential, for sure has shootout potential. The defense aren't good. There are 2 overhyped defenses with really bad secondaries. Both of their secondaries outside of Ramsey are bad. Darius Slay isn't good, as for all you guys. He's not good anymore, so This is a game that could shoot out. This is a game that could score a lot of points. It's one of the higher total games, 46. Not the highest. It's kind of in the middle, but I think this game has potential to score so much. The Rams offense we know can score a ton. Philly, when they need to, can score a ton. They're getting Miles Sanders back this week. Jared Goff is definitely someone I want to stack this week. Oh, this is the Philly video. I think Carson Wentz is a fine stack, so probably not someone I really want to go to, but I think it's still a good stack because I think this team probably runs the ball more, honestly. So, but definitely like Desean Jackson in tournaments. Definitely like Jalen Reagor in tournaments. Greg Ward probably not as much. Terry McLaurin, Steven Sims for the Washington football team going up against the Arizona Cardinals. McLaurin, target hog on his team. Didn't really see him last week, though. That was, what I was expecting was to see a ton of targets. But Washington won, but Dwayne Haskins is not good, man. He's just not good. He looked terrible. I watched the whole second half of that game, and he just looked horrendous. Anyway, McLaurin 5,900, Steven Sims 4,700. Those are the two I'm interested in. When we go look at the offensive versus defensive matchups, McLaurin looks great. Haskins looks bad. When we go look at the offensive line versus defensive line, it is going to be a negative line for the Washington offensive line. But Terry McLaurin still has a great matchup here. He still ended up seeing 7 targets last week. I think that could go up this week to like 10. So Terry McLaurin is definitely someone I want to get in tournaments. He's too cheap at like 5,900. So definitely want to get some exposure to him. Steven Sims only saw 3 targets this week. Honestly, is a little overpriced. Like Steven Sims is someone I like to roster, but like Rashad Perriman's 3,800 and Steven Sims is like 47. So I don't really want to go there too much. I think it's just a little bit too expensive in this price range. You can get guys that have way higher floor and honestly the same ceiling. So give me that all day over Steven Sims. Just a little too expensive for me. Up next, we have Anthony Miller, Allen Robinson for the Detroit Lions for the Chicago Bears going against the New York Giants. $5,200 Anthony Miller went off last week, and then $6,400 Allen Robinson. They're going to have a positive matchup versus the terrible, horrible Giants secondary. Even Trubisky has a positive matchup against the overall secondary. When Trubisky has a good matchup, it's bad because that guy never grades out well. Offense versus defense line matchup is going to be positive for the Bears. Allen Robinson, one of the best matchups on the slate. So is Anthony Miller. They both have very good matchups. Robinson saw 9 targets last week. Miller saw 6 targets last week. I want both of them in every single form. This is a game this is why I say the Bears-Giants game is sneaky. Because, yeah, it's not projected to be high scoring, but it's also projected to be close. When close games happen, and sometimes defenses don't even, the games just end up being a shootout. So is this going to be a close defensive game? Yeah, people want to say that because of the Bears, but it's also the Giants, and their defense sucks, and the Bears' defense isn't as good as everyone else wants to say. So, and Giants' offense is pretty solid. So, I think this game's sneaky. It's a sneaky stack again with Trubisky. I said it last week. It was a pretty good stack. Didn't win you a GVP, but it was still a good stack. I think it's sneaky again here, going to Allen Robinson and Anthony Miller in this game. So, definitely like some Robinson and Miller a good bit this week. Even if you don't play them in stacks, I definitely want to get some of these guys just in lineups in general in tournaments. Up next, we got the Detroit Lions, where this really all depends on Kenny Golladay. $6,200 Kenny Golladay. If he plays, he's a good play. There's Jair Alexander over there, but honestly, he's probably going to just shadow Marvin Jones most of the game because he's the smaller wide receiver. That's usually what Jair Alexander does. Danny Amendola is 4,800. Quinn Cephas is 3,800. And Jones is 57. Overall matchups grades out positively for the wide receivers for Detroit. Stafford grades out positively against the secondary. The offensive line versus defensive line is slightly negative, but not too negative where I'm too worried about it. All these receivers grade out positively. So when we go look at the targets from last week, Quintus Cephas led the team in targets with 10 targets. That surprised me, honestly. I heard a lot of good things about Quintus Cephas out at camp, but to come out and get 10 targets in the opener was surprising. So if Golladay misses, I think he's a sneaky option in tournaments. Honestly, if you want to go in cash and play Quintus Cephas too in a game that's like the 3rd highest total game on the slate, I don't hate it. He got 10 targets last week. I don't think he'll get 10 again, but they seem pretty secure. Marvin Jones had 8, Amendola had 7. I don't really see Marvin Jones' targets coming down. I can see Amendola's coming to target. I can see Quintus Cephas' targets coming down, but who are they going to? Are we just going to get a 12-target game from Marvin Jones? Hawkinson had 5 last week. Maybe 1 or 2 of them go to him, but there's just really nowhere else for the targets to go to. I wouldn't be surprised to see, Jones and Cephas switch. 10 for Jones, 8 for Cephas, and 8 targets for a $3,800 receiver in a slot against bad slot corner in Green Bay. I'll take that. So I don't hate him for cash. Probably not someone I'm going to go to, but if Kenny Galladay's out, definitely an interesting one for cash. If Kenny Galladay's in, I don't think Cephas is even in play at all. I don't really ever play Danny Amendola either. Marvin Jones is in play every week because that guy will have a 4-touchdown game at some point this year, so he's definitely in play. Devonte Adams, Alan Lazard, MVS, Marquez Valdes-Scantling for the Green Bay Packers. Adams went off last week. Just went freaking off. Had the game, one of the best games of his career. It's a great matchup against Minnesota this year. But now we go to Detroit where, Trufant didn't practice yesterday. I got to look if he practiced today. If he's questionable, if he misses, and Okudah hasn't practiced yet either. If they're out without their top 2 corners, this is Devonte Adams' explosion week again, bro. Again. He's going to go off again against this team. They once again have nobody to guard him. Even if Okuda's out and it's just Trufant. Trufant's not good anymore. Like, he's going to torch him. So, yeah, give me all to Devonte Adams. All these receivers grade out. Well, not MVS. MVS doesn't grade out positively. Rodgers grades out positively against everybody. The offensive versus defensive line is going to grade out positively for Green Bay. And then you have Adams, looks like a great matchup. Alan Lazar looks like a great matchup. Devonte Adams, love him. If you can find a way to get him in cash, if you feel comfortable getting Devonte Adams in cash, go for it. New subscriber. That's nice. Alan Lazar and MVS, two high upside players who, when they get targets, if they get in the end zone, are going to be good. I don't hate going Green Bay stack again this week. I really don't. I really just don't. I don't think this Detroit defense is good. They're banged up, so definitely some exposure to the Green Bay stack for sure, and definitely exposure in terms of Devonte Adams. I love him again, man. I just think he's going to – I mean, I've been – all offseason, he's been like my wide receiver 1 in fantasy football, and he 17 targets, man. I don't know if he's going to get that again, but – He could lead the league. I mean, when's the week that he's not going to get double-digit targets? He's going to have to get hurt. Like, he's going to get double-digit targets every single week. Like, this is the guy, man. So, yeah, Devonte Adams, great tournament play again. Absolutely in love with him this week. Go to Minnesota, where we got Justin Jefferson in the slot, or Justin Jefferson on the outside, BC's in the slot, and then Adam Thielen at $7,200. Going against the Colts, where they have Rocky Sin, Xavier Rhodes, and Kenny Moore. Positive matchups everywhere for this team. Kirk Cousins grades out positively. The offensive line is going to grade out horribly negatively because their offensive line is garbage. It's bad. It's bad. But I still like Adam Thielen. He has a grades out as a positive matchup. I think Justin Jefferson, I mean, I don't know which one Xavier Rhodes is going to guard, but I think both these guys are in play. I mean, Thielen saw 8 targets. Jefferson only saw 3, but if Jefferson's going to get guarded by Xavier Rhodes, he'll probably see more than 3 because he's just going to be open because Xavier Rhodes is dust. So, yeah, I don't hate that at all. I think both those guys are solid options in tournaments. Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley for the Atlanta Falcons. Yeah, so I talked about the Dallas a little bit ago. Now we're on to Atlanta, where we have the same thing. I mean, it's just a high-scoring game. They're supposed to be playing from behind. Terrible defense, great matchups everywhere for all the offense. And it's just going to be a ton of scoring and not a lot of defense. So, Julio, Ridley, fire them up. I mean, there's just not too much to say here. They both have very, very positive matchups. And they're both in a high total game. They both saw 12 targets last week. And if you honestly want to throw in Russell Gage and hope he gets a touchdown, he saw 13 last week. So I don't hate him either, but probably would just rather go to Julio or Ridley. They just have way more upside. I don't even really want to play Russell Gage in cash because on normal weeks, yeah, Russell Gage would probably be like a really good cash play, but some of these other guys in cash just have more upside with the same amount of floor. So give me the upside. So and give me the upside with the floor. Like Russell Gage doesn't have upside. So Julio and Ridley, definitely two guys I definitely want to get some exposure to. Up next we have for Carolina, Robbie Anderson, who had that like 80-yard touchdown last week. DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel. Robbie Anderson up to 5,200 kind of scares me a little bit, but they got to go up against Carlton Davis and Jamel Dean, 2 emerging corners, Sean Murphy Bunting, and then in the secondary, or the safeties, Antoine Winfield Jr., Jordan Whitehead. Teddy grades out positively against all these guys. The offensive versus defensive line, it's going to be a negative matchup for Carolina because Carolina's offensive line sucks. Honestly, this matchup really isn't that good. Like, it's not like last year where Tampa was like this elite defensive team. Like, they're really not. Or elite team that just play players against their defense sucks. Now they are this elite defensive team. Like, I mean, yeah, Jared Cook kind of went off, and yeah, the Saints won, but their defense is good. It's pretty good. And DJ Moore, I mean, he's probably the only guy I really want exposure to. Robbie Anderson maybe just because of the upside, but probably not a ton of it. But DJ Moore for sure I'll get some exposure to. Don't want to stack this game. Curtis Samuel probably not as much. We look at the targets, and I mean, Robbie Anderson at 8, DJ Moore at 9, and even put Samuels in. It wasn't a lot. So these guys are getting the ball, but I don't know. I still just don't think they're that elite of plays. I mean, I just don't like the matchup. All right, here we go. Tampa. Here's another team that's just interesting. Mike Evans played last week, but he didn't look healthy at all. Chris Godwin has a concussion. He's on concussion protocol. He might not play. So Scotty Miller, $4,100. If Chris Godwin doesn't play, I think Scotty Miller's just a lock. Like, he's probably the best play in the slate at this point. Because it's not just that he's going to get the targets. They're playing Carolina, man. And Carolina's defense is just so bad. Like, it's so bad. Especially their secondary. Dante Jackson's terrible. Troy Pride Jr. is not good. Justin Burris really isn't that good. All these receivers grade out positively against the corners. Jeremy Chin, Trey Boston's pretty solid. But Tom Brady's still grades out positively against the entire secondary. When we go look at the offensive versus defensive line, it's going to be a positive matchup. And Chris Godwin and Mike Evans are two of the best matchups on the entire slate. Last week, Godwin saw 7 targets. Evans only saw 4, but that's because I think he was hurt. It was really more of a decoy, if anything. If Godwin's out, I think Evans is an interesting tournament play. I'm not playing him in cash, but I'll play Evans in tournaments for sure. And then Scotty Miller, like, he's a lock for cash. If Godwin misses, you just plug in Scotty Miller in cash just immediately. He's a lock at that point. Definitely somewhere I want to go to, just for sure. And then, I mean, he's still fine in tournaments. Brady targeted him 6 times last week, so I think he's fine. Larry Fitzgerald, DeAndre Hopkins, and Christian Kirk for the Arizona Cardinals. I think this is our last cheap receiver we get to talk about, guys. There's been a million of them. This is the last one I like for cash. Christian Kirk, $4,300. The Washington secondary is terrible. Fabian Moreau, Ronald Darby, and Jimmy Moreland suck. All of them are going to have positive matchups. Kyler's going to have a positive matchup against the whole secondary. When we look at the offensive versus defensive line matchup, it's positive. DeAndre Hopkins, one of the best. I think it's the second best matchup on the entire slate, behind AJ. Yeah. So DeAndre Hopkins has the second best matchup overall on the slate. Christian Kirk is a very good one. We saw Hopkins get targeted 16 times last week. Now, I don't think that's going to keep up. I think he's going to come down to like 10 a game. And I think Christian Kirk's going to come up to like 8 a game. So Christian Kirk, if he's going to get 7, 8 targets against this horrible secondary in Washington, sign me up for that, man. I mean, this is one of the higher total games of 46.5 on the slate. They're going to be playing ahead, but I don't care. This defense sucks. I think Christian Kirk's a very good option to play. And if you're playing cash and you when I play cash, I like to kind of make a stack in my lineup. Just, a quarterback and one receiver. Kyler Murray, the lock clash quarterback for me. Christian Kirk, just plug them in there. I think they're both great cash plays. They're both cheap. Hopkins, of course, is going to be an elite tournament option. I'll be playing him in tournaments everywhere. But definitely Christian Kirk for cash. And then Larry Fitzgerald, I just don't play anymore. He's just not good anymore. He doesn't have any sort of upside, so don't really want to go there. Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods for LA Rams in this Philly matchup where I just talked about a few minutes ago how great I love this game, how I think this game could shoot out. So Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods are two of my favorite places to go this week, going against Darius Slay, Devonte Maddox, and Nickel Roby-Coben, which may be a little tough for Cooper Kupp, but overall I'm not really that scared. They all grade out positively against them. Jared Goff grades out positively. The offensive versus defensive line is a positive matchup. So Jared Goff stacks to either one of these guys definitely looks good for me. Probably more Robert Woods than Kupp. Kupp only got targeted 5 times last game, where Robert Woods was targeted 8. So definitely want to go there. This is also like a tough rush defense, and we know how much Rams ran the ball a ton last game, but Philly you want to throw against, so I think they'll throw against them. I think this game could just shoot out. So this is definitely a team I want to stack here at LA Rams. And then we'll close out the 49ers, where I just really don't have any interest in either of these two. Ayuk didn't play last week, even if he does. I mean, at 4,300, I think he's fine. He had a Jets secondary's trash. It's going to be a positive matchup for everywhere for San Francisco. But I don't know. He's just going to get the targets. Even if Kittle's out there, I think they just want to run the ball, man. We know they're going to be up. Their defense is going to shut down. Their offensive line is going to just kill the defensive line on the Jets. They're going to be able to run the ball a ton. I mean, I'm sure one of these receivers falls in for a touchdown. Kendrick Bourne, Pettis, if Ayuk plays, Travis Benjamin, whatever, man. One of them probably will, but just something I'm not too excited about getting to, especially when they were targeting the running backs last week. If Kittle misses, a little bit more interesting, but still, I'm just not too excited. But yeah, I think that's really all I got to say. Just a little bit of a longer video, but a ton of wide receivers and good matchups and good cash plays we have to go over. Thank you guys so much for checking this out. Make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Thanks.